In this video, we're going to look at the autonomic nervous system. We will compare the autonomic nervous system with the somatic nervous system. We're going to look at the divisions of the autonomic nervous system, investigate structure and the neurotransmitters involved in each of the divisions, look at tone when we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, and then finish up with reflexes. It is easy for us to understand what the somatic nervous system does because it is under our conscious control. Each move we make is a conscious choice. The autonomic nervous system is harder to understand because it controls all of the processes that we don't think much about unless something has gone wrong. The autonomic system controls smooth and cardiac muscles as well as glands. When we're looking at the somatic versus the autonomic nervous system, the somatic system is voluntary, and it works on skeletal muscles. So the organs that carry out the commands are skeletal muscles. All of the somatic cell bodies are found within the central nervous system, mostly in the spinal cord, and the axons are going to extend out to the muscles that they innervate. And the only neurotransmitter that we see in the somatic nervous system is acetylcholine. In the autonomic nervous system, it's going to control the involuntary or subconscious kind of undergoings within our visceral organs. It acts on the cardiac and smooth muscles and glands. It is easy for us to understand what the somatic nervous system does because it is under our conscious control. Each move we make is a conscious choice. The autonomic nervous system is harder to understand because it controls all of the processes we don't think much about unless something about them has gone wrong. The autonomic nervous system controls the smooth and cardiac muscle and the glands of our body. The autonomic nervous system can direct blood where is needed, adjust the diameter of tubes like our blood vessels and GI tract. It can also adjust the rate of our heart, the rate of contraction of smooth muscles in our visceral organs, among many other things. In addition to what these systems control, there are important differences in the structure and neurotransmitters the systems use. In the somatic nervous system, the cell bodies of the motor neurons are in the gray matter of the central nervous system, and the axons extend to the skeletal muscles that they innervate. In the autonomic nervous system, there's a 2-neuron chain. The cell body of the first neuron, the preganglionic neuron, is within the central nervous system, and its axon is going to extend to a ganglion that's outside of the central nervous system. In that ganglion, we find the cell body of the postganglionic neuron, and that axon is going to reach out to its effector. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter released by all motor neurons in the somatic nervous system, and it is always excitatory in the somatic system. In the autonomic nervous system, all preganglionic neurons release acetylcholine, but postganglionic fibers release either acetylcholine or norepinephrine. And these neurotransmitters in the autonomic nervous system can either have inhibitory or excitatory effects. Nonetheless, the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system work together, and the integrated work of both of these systems is coordinated by our higher brain centers. The autonomic nervous system is further divided into the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. You can think of the parasympathetic division as the rest and digest division. Its job is to slow heart and respiration rates and lower blood pressure, while increasing the activity of the GI tract, such as digestion, defecation, and diuresis. Diuresis means to produce urine. The sympathetic division is the fight or flight division. This system prepares the body to respond to threats by redirecting blood from the GI tract to the skeletal muscles. This slows or stops digestion while delivering increased oxygen to muscles. It also increases the heart rate, which also gets more blood to the tissues, and increases the release of glucose from the liver, providing more energy for our muscles. In addition to these effects, it also causes a dry mouth, cold skin, dilated pupils, and dilated bronchioles of the lungs. The dilated pupils allow for us to see better, and the bronchioles allow us to breathe better. It is important to remember that fight or flight and rest and digest are catchphrases that help us remember the effects of each division. They can also lead us to misunderstandings that one or the other division is working at any given time. Both divisions are always sending messages, but it is the amount and intensity of those messages that change with environment, experiences, and conditions. The antagonistic relationships between the two visions maintain homeostasis. In addition, these divisions can work together. For instance, sexual arousal is controlled by the parasympathetic fibers, while orgasm is controlled by sympathetic fibers. The parasympathetic fibers cause vasodilation, which leads to erection in both males and females, and the sympathetic fibers cause muscle contractions, which lead to ejaculation and the waves of vaginal contraction that come with orgasm. At no point is one of these divisions fully shut off. Okay, we would not survive without both of these divisions doing their jobs. The two divisions have structural differences. The fibers of the parasympathetic division originate in the cranial and sacral regions, while the sympathetic fibers originate in the thoracic and lumbar regions. The fibers also reflect differences, with the parasympathetic system having very long preganglionic fibers and the sympathetic system having short preganglionic fibers. These differences are due to the location of the ganglia in each division. The parasympathetic division has ganglia that are close to the organs that they control, while the sympathetic division has ganglia that are adjacent to or next to the spinal cord. The autonomic nervous system uses the neurotransmitters acetylcholine and norepinephrine. Acetylcholine is released by all preganglionic neurons and by the postganglionic fibers of the parasympathetic division. In addition, acetylcholine is released by the postganglionic fibers of the sympathetic division that activate sweat glands. All other postganglionic fibers in the sympathetic division are going to release norepinephrine and its close relative epinephrine. Acetylcholine can bind to two different types of receptors in the autonomic nervous system, nicotinic and muscarinic. These receptors are named for the drugs that can also bind to them and mimic the effects of acetylcholine. Nicotine we're familiar with from tobacco. Muscarine comes from mushrooms. These receptors are called cholinergic because acetylcholine binds to them. Nicotinic receptors are on all postganglionic neurons, both sympathetic and parasympathetic, on the hormone-producing cells within the adrenal medulla, and where neurons synapse with skeletal muscles called the neuromuscular junction. Acetylcholine results in the depolarization of these postsynaptic cells. Muscarinic receptors are found on the effector cells that are stimulated by postganglionic cholinergic fibers. They can be either excitatory or inhibitory. For instance, they slow cardiac muscle, but they increase the motility of the small intestine. Norepinephrine and its close relative epinephrine bind to adrenergic receptors and can be inhibitory or excitatory, depending on the class of the adrenergic receptor and its target organ. Norepinephrine can increase the heart rate, but it can cause relaxation in the bronchi of the lungs. Because the autonomic nervous system is not under conscious control, it is dependent on autonomic reflexes. The receptors for these reflexes are found within the viscera. Information from those receptors is going to travel up the afferent pathway through a visceral sensory neuron to an integration center. In this case, an integration center may be a preganglionic neuron. It might be an interneuron that's found in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord, or a neuron that's found within the gastrointestinal tract walls. It's going to send information or a command down a motor neuron. That's, again, that two-neuron chain with a preganglionic neuron and a postganglionic neuron. The postganglionic neuron is going to send a command to a visceral organ of some sort, and it's going to result in that autonomic nervous system response. Our body depends on autonomic nervous system tone to maintain homeostasis. Tone is the continuous partial activation of a system or organ in the body. Sympathetic tone is best kind of shown by the partial constriction that we always have in our blood vessels. Because blood vessels are almost exclusively innervated by the sympathetic nervous system, meaning that the parasympathetic nervous system does not really affect them, it allows the body to respond to increases in blood pressure by adjusting the diameter of the blood vessels. The parasympathetic system also participates in tone. And so parasympathetic tone, one of the better examples is of slowing the heart rate. The heart by itself would beat 100 beats per minute, but that parasympathetic tone slows it down to about 75 beats per minute. Now that you have an understanding of the autonomic nervous system and its divisions, take a moment to create a table which identifies the effects of the divisions of the autonomic nervous system on the major organs in the body.